Do 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 da da dee da da dum. I remember 15-year-old me looking forward with great anticipation to the United States bicentennial celebrations, something that 65-year-old me just doesn't feel. My final day of school as an Ashton, Maryland, Sherwood High freshman was a lovely early June 1976 day. School had been a half day, and after I'd lunched, I'd climbed onto my school bus and taken the first seat I could find. As Bonnie brought the nearly empty school bus to a stop at the intersection of Stonegate and Wellwood Drives, I stood and walked to the front of my bus. I paused to wish Bonnie a good summer and to say goodbye, then stepped off the bus and waited for Kelly Washington, my neighbor and classmate since sixth grade, to join me before we started walking up the big hill on Wellwood. Wellwood was long and somewhat steep, but Kelly and I only walked the steep section to Butterchurn Lane, where we turned left and continued homeward on a far less strenuous slope. Kelly and I became neighbors when our parents moved a mere 17 miles north of the U.S. Capitol building into brand new houses on Butterchurn Lane. Most of our nearby neighbors were baby boomers, but Kelly's parents and my folks were born in the 1920s, and the three Washington children's births spanned roughly the same decade as my four siblings and I did. Kelly and I were friends, but not best buddies, so I do credit him, through absolutely no fault of his part, with my only hospitalizing concussion to date when I borrowed his skateboard and figured I'd take on Wellwood. Wellwood won, and I wound up in the hospital for a couple of days. Kelly's mom was a full professor at Howard University, and his dad was an executive at IBM. My father had migrated from being a department head at UMCP to being an executive at AAA, while mom had become a full-time housewife and caregiver when my eldest sibling was born in 1956. During my freshman year at Sherwood, I'd taken American history, science, algebra 1, English, gym, psychology, and shop. My history instructor was Mr. Seymour, who taught U.S. history from European exploration and colonization to 1861 to 30, mostly apathetic 14 and 15-year-olds. I was interested in learning, and Seymour's teaching style consisted primarily of students reading the text as homework and Mr. Seymour providing additional details about the subject beyond what our textbook provided. I found U.S. history interesting and paid attention. I think Mr. Seymour's perspective varied somewhat from most of my other teachers for the simple fact that he was an African-American man who came of age during a time when civil rights for people other than white males were beginning to take root. For Seymour, the whitewashed history of manifest destiny and the glory of westward expansion that our text provided were jumping off points for deeper discussion, and he offered a broader perspective than the text provided. By participating in the discussions, I learned a lot. I learned that history is also his story, that perspective and status quo expectations greatly influence how events are perceived and how history is written. And the history I had presented up to that time presented European settlers as part of manifest destiny. Manifest destiny proclaims that my white ancestors were driven into the world by God and that they were sent here to tame the savage and convert natives to Christianity, a perspective that reflects a self-serving bias at best and provides for the United States mass slaughter of Native Americans who preceded our invasion by millennia and the lifelong imprisonment of black-skinned people via chattel slavery. Seymour kept to the text, but he didn't keep exclusively to the text. Having a more nuanced understanding of U.S. history, a history that included greed, racism, a singular God, sexism, etc., did not turn me away from my country any more than learning that my four siblings and I were not delivered by the stork turned me away from my parents. I simply gained a greater understanding of how 500 years of exploration, annexation, and exploitation of those who preceded Europeans to the Americas was being taught as a fairy tale, and that the reality was far different. Nations, like people, want to think well of themselves, and like people, we tend to give ourselves more credit than we do others, and to feel that our way is the right way. I was very aware of past transgressions my country had committed, as well as the finally laid to rest Vietnam War via our withdrawal. We weren't the good guys because there aren't any good guys, but oh my goodness, back then at least, we kind of tried something that is nearly eradicated under the tyranny and exclusively self-serving nature that my country is either marching towards or has already reached via our liar and rapist in chief. I never worshipped a president in my life, but until Trump came along, I never felt that IGM-FYG, that's I got my F you guys, was our national motto. Today is the United States' 250th anniversary, our semi-quincentennial, and I am saddened beyond belief by the racism, sexism, religious fervor, and hatred for non-Christians that is again becoming part of the USA. We need to return to trying to live up to being one nation with liberty and justice for all, not narrow-minded, trigger-happy bigots who literally denounce Muslim jihadis while killing in the name of white Jesus.